face your just punishments. Good evening, and welcome once again to Just Punishments. I'm your host, Charlie the Professor Esser, and with me, as always, is my skinny rich friend.
It's Mozz.
Hey, Mozz. So glad you're here, as always. And tonight's episode, Season 1, Episode 4 of The Punisher, Resupply. Madani and Sam plan a delicate operation. Curtis tries to connect with Lewis, and Frank encourages Micro to get his hands dirty. Directed by Carrie Skoglund. Nope, just lost my IMDb page. Written by... Let's see here. Jerry Conway, of course, is our original creator of The Punisher, but this was written by... Away ad for Death Wish. Written by... let's see. The created by credit goes to Steve Lightfoot. Dario Scartapane got the written by credit. Our story editor was Angela Lamanna, and hardest working man in show business this week, Ken Christensen, as our staff writer. Okay. This was an interesting episode. Great ending. Though, man, you know, there are a lot of things in these episodes that make me think that my theory that Micro is playing Punisher, that basically Micro has built up this conspiracy theory that Frank's family was killed because of that video.
Right.
And I do think that as this progresses, I think that, you know, if we follow the arc of Micro in the book, there is a betrayal of the Punisher by Micro. And it would not surprise me if, in their adaptation of this, that's how they work in that betrayal. That the betrayal has actually already occurred. That the betrayal was Micro basically feeding the Punisher this false line, this false narrative that sends Punisher on this quest that he never needed to go on. That's my belief. But right now, this is just my crazy fan theory. So those of you who have watched ahead, because I have not yet, you know if this is the case or not. And those who haven't, well, we'll all find out together. But we open up this episode with our good friend...
Lewis.
I'm sorry?
Oh, Turk? I thought it was Lewis digging the bunker. That's where the episode opens up.
Okay. So, yes. Okay. Yes, you're... Wait, no, I think we see Turk. Do we see Lewis first?
Yeah, I think it opens on him digging, and you're wondering what he's doing, and he's making a bunker like a foxhole or something.
Yes.
To feel comfortable in. And then we get to good old Turk.
And, well, I'm glad you mentioned that, because it does remind me of that story we get at the very first episode of, you know, when they're in the what do you call it? The support group, and they're telling the story of the soldier who's digging the hole.
Right.
And nobody can help him, and nobody can, and everyone has advice. Everyone tells him what to do, but the only person who can really help him is the soldier who's been there before.
Right. That's interesting.
Yeah, I thought that was an intentional callback. I don't know. I could be wrong, but that was my
For sure.
And that does come back later. We get some great bits with that. But in the meantime, we have the Punisher tapping on our old friend Turk, and this is. I don't know if this whole scene is out of character for the Punisher, although he has let Turk live once before. Because I don't remember.
I feel like he's a known guy. You know, everybody in the game knows Turk. He's not just a regular foot soldier, and he does keep his nose clean for the most part. So I think he can sort of understand. I don't know. if Punisher has the capacity to see shades of gray, but
Yeah, well, I mean, officially he's not.
Everybody
supposed
lets
to,
Turk
but,
go.
Yeah, well, he's on contract,
Yeah.
Well, this goes to one of those things that I always make the comment on when we talk comic books with old Phil over on Capes and Lunatics and the Sidekicks feed, which this should be airing on soon. Of Capes and Lunatics is that the Punisher in general is bad at his job because of narrative requirements, because he can never kill the Kingpin or he can never kill a character of any import. He is essentially always going to be bad at his job because he can never actually punish the main villains. He can only punish lower level villains. So, and we get an example of that here with Turk once again avoiding the wrath of the Punisher. By just giving some relatively minor information. And, of course, the Punisher is here trying to jack an arms shipment from Turk, and Turk doesn't have the arms because the Greeks, who he was supposed to buy these arms from, basically got a better offer. And it's a neat little reference he makes there about how he I guess they just didn't want to deal with him because he was Turk, because his name is Turk. Greeks and Turks have their history going back there, and modern day as well. But we do find out who is the higher bidder, Mozz.
I'm not sure. I don't recall.
Oh, Sam and Madani.
Right. Okay, that's how they got it. I was still a little unclear on that.
Yeah, they were bidding. They were making a higher bid, and because they wanted the weapons, and basically they're going to get the weapons on land, and essentially
and trap whoever's selling the guns, right? Yes, right. Pose as buyers and for a sting operation, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, it's not technically entrapment because they were engaged in the criminal activity already. They just made the offer to facilitate the criminal activity, but the criminal activity was already in active engagement.
Right,
which is the difference between entrapment and a sting. A little bit of legal hair splitting for you.
No, but it's important hair splitting.
Yes, it is. So, and of course we know that it was an active criminal activity because Turk was the original buyer.
Right.
So it's not like they went out to it's not like they went to Turk and said, Turk, can you get us these weapons? And then Turk went out and found the weapons. That's entrapment.
Right.
But when the weapons were already coming in and then they outbid Turk, that is just a sting in the ongoing thing. And there may be other legal... I'm not an actual lawyer. I just pretend to be one on podcasts. So they're making this this plan, and Madani is kind of in her own world because she is still obsessing with the case of her informant who was murdered, as we know, by Frank Castle in Afghanistan. She's still obsessed with that case, and so she's not. And she has worked out all of the soldiers, all the special ops people who weren't on other assignments, so must have been on that assignment, which was a pretty great way to figure that out. Yes, I thought that was pretty cool. And she has she's working on this, and we get her boss coming in this episode, if I'm not mistaken, to take her off the Wolf investigation.
Right.
Yes, because and that's what we find. The arms deal was one of Wolf's cases, and Sam makes that point. He was a heck of a cop, for a corrupt cop.
Right.
Yes, but everything that her supervisor says makes sense. And this is one of these things where I think one of these things that tells me that this argument of conspiracy is actually a ruse. That her boss isn't taking her off of the Wolf investigation to protect the Wolf, the Wolf's investigation, to protect the people at play. Because first off, we know that Wolf was killed by the Punisher. We know that it wasn't some part of a grander conspiracy. He just got off by the Punisher.
Right. But I feel like they also need somebody in Wolf's position who plays ball.
Yes, but
it's like because they need somebody who's dirty and who's willing to take money and look the other way. And they lost somebody important in that fiasco with Castle.
Yeah, but
I think that's why they want her away from this case, because she's going to probably want to look for the truth, and they have their own avenues of probably making money that they don't want disturbed.
Yes, but that is what the conspiratorial mind wants you to think. What is actually arguably at play is that, it is you can't investigate your own. You can't investigate yourself, essentially. That it has to go to the OIG, the Office of the Inspector General. It has to go up the chain because, for all anyone knows, Madani's on the take. For all anyone knows, Madani killed Wolf to get his job. I mean, there's too much room for that conspiracy to blossom in the minds of the conspiratorial. That even though Madani thinks she's being taken off of the case because she knows too much, in reality, and much like the case with her murdered informant, it may not really be this case of we're trying to keep it quiet so much as it was a friendly fire situation at best, which is not accurate, but it was the wrong guy who died in a war zone, and the wrong guy dies in war zones all the time. It isn't worth our effort to investigate it because because what occurred was not in and of itself a major case from their perspective. And then, of course, you also have that other possibility that maybe her informant wasn't the white knight she thought he was.
Right.
Which is that other aspect of it that, when you get conspiratorial, you tend to think of things in these black and white terms, not in the terms of what is everybody doing to try and survive in this war zone. And her informant may well have been trying to survive in this war zone and did things that maybe she did not know about that put him in that position. So, and this is where I get this idea that I get the feeling that even though there's reasons for us to think of conspiracy, not the least of which that we see Agent Orn has Madani's office bugged.
Right.
That the Watchmen are watching the watchdogs,
Right.
All of that could just be standard levels of paranoia, You get this idea that maybe Agent Orange is in the middle of something dark and mysterious, or maybe there is more to this internal investigation, We don't...
Right, because...
Yeah.
Just skipping ahead to the next episode where we get introduced to him a little bit, you get the sense that I believe him, when he says that you're doing horrible things for the right reasons. I believe that he believes that.
Oh, yeah.
So...
And that's what I absolutely believe. And not for nothing, that puts him very much in line with Frank Castle. Very much who Frank Castle is a guy who's doing horrible things for the right reasons. And
it's funny. They mirror the two of them. And sorry, not to bring up the next episode, but I caught up a little bit. But when he gets asked to dinner, he says, "I would be honored." And then when Agent Orange is asked to take a leadership role, he says the same words in the same way, "I'd be honored." And so it's like they were trying to make that comparison.
Yes. Yes, and that actually brings us to our B plot, which is the cuckolding of Micro, at least in the emotional cuckolding of Micro. And it's interesting because they make a lot of references to Micro's son being a jerk. But you'll recall when we last saw Frank's son, in a very similar way, he was being very much a jerk.
Right.
Because, of course, what it is, it's this father who is not there.
Right.
And, of course, Micro's son's being even more of a jerk to Frank Castle because, you're not my dad is the attitude that he's taking. It's like, you do not get to come in here and fix stuff. And meanwhile, the daughter's like, "Hey, let's." And
that's my mom.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we get this conflict here, and we get Frank making references to the fact that he could have Micro's wife whenever he wants.
Right, but it's interesting. The one interesting moment in their little exchange was as he's leaving, he says to Micro's wife, he insinuates that Micro let the family down. And the way the feeling changes in that moment, she completely comes running to his defense. And Micro's watching this whole thing. And it must have been really nice for him to hear that. And it almost makes you wonder, what is Frank nice enough to pull that out of her so Micro can see it? Or did he plan something to be perceived a certain way by Micro to, put the pins and needles to him, and it backfired, and he actually got something nice out of it?
Yeah, I actually think that he was trying to be a jerk to Micro, and it backfired. I mean, it's always easy to imagine, Frank Castle as, playing that, eighth dimensional emotional chess, but that's not Frank Castle. Frank Castle.
Right, that's true.
He may be a great military tactician. He may be a real BA when it comes to getting into a tight spot and getting out of it. And as we see, he is basically, Captain America level physical when the need arises. But at that moment, I think he was trying to put the pins to Micro, and it backfired because I think Micro was not for nothing. Micro's wife knows why he got shot. Knows he was trying to do the right thing. And of course, it gets to this whole thing about, and again with Frank putting the pins and needles to Micro, the idea that Micro doesn't get his hands dirty. That Micro isn't that he calls a guy, and of course in this case the Punisher's the guy he called, and for what it's worth, I think it's grating on the Punisher that he knows, as we said earlier, that he is being manipulated by Micro, that he is finding himself, not really in as much the know as he would like to be, and not feeling like he is fully in control of his own story.
Right.
And so he is trying to put it to Micro, and he makes Micro come along while they get their chase car to pull off this heist. And that lucky car thief. I don't know. I can't remember if we've met him before this moment or not, but he's certainly lucked out to have the Punisher show up at that moment, just before he's about to get murdered by the heads of the car theft ring, and then just gets to luckily not be hit in the crossfire. So lucky him, as it goes, and And, Micro has to come in. He sees all the death. It's very disturbing for him, but he carries it on. And then we get what the plan is.
No, see, he came in like it smelled bad in there. Now, if someone had just died, they're not going to start smelling bad immediately. What was he smelling? Did they have, do you think bodies there from before, or what were they doing? Why did it smell so bad in there?
Well, I mean, there's one of two things. One is the old idea that, when you die, you lose your bowels.
Oh, fair enough.
So that was what I sort of got the implication from that. And the other point is that, I don't know if you've ever, gone into a meat locker or a butcher shop. There is a smell of gore.
Right.
It's not a horrible smell, but if you're someone who is not accustomed to the smell of carcasses, you can smell that when there's a lot of blood around. You do smell that immediately, and if it's not a smell,
I guess there was a lot of blood.
Yeah, if you're not, I mean, I took it to mean that they had loosed their bowels, but there is also another implication or argument that you could put in there about them just the smell of blood being something that Marco was uncomfortable with. Because he doesn't buy that.
I like the loose bowels theory better.
Yeah, well, and from the way that the Punisher referenced it, it made me think that that's what they were referencing, because he says, they don't talk about that, because it is one of the, because that's what they always say whenever they make reference to people being hung and loosing their bowels and saying, they don't talk about that. Anyway, so they steal the car. We see, and again, Micro really just showing his talents, par excellence, where, again, he's looping video, making people see what he wants them to see. Hey, which Killmonger goes and does in Black Panther 2. So Punisher was doing that trick first. So good for the Punisher. And because I remember I was watching Black Panther this last week. I was like, oh yeah, that was in I just saw that in the Punisher. And we see Frank essentially leaping onto the truck as it's driving, and taking over the truck. And I'm trying to remember how the truck gets put over to the pier. Oh, no, that was supposed to be the meeting spot. That's right. And then he scares them off with the flamethrower, which...
Yeah, it was kind of a little bogus, but all right, it was kind of cool, I guess. And unnecessary, too. Yeah. I guess they just said, hey, it'd be cool if he had a flamethrower in this scene. It's like, yeah, sure.
Well, I guess the argument for the flamethrower is that you won't hear it from a distance. Which, if he had threatened them with a gun and had to fire a warning shot at them, they'd have.
That's fair. Yeah.
They would have certainly heard it.
Yeah.
I mean, you can always make the argument. You can always make the argument.
No, that's a pretty good one
to make the point. Anyway, so he steals the truck, and he has Micro drive the truck. But of course, Madani figures out what's going on, and she gets in her muscle car to chase him down. And then you get this great car chase scene between the Mustang, with Frank in the Mustang, Madani in the... actually, I think that was also a GTO, wasn't it? That was just an older model GTO. Yeah, I don't think it was a Thunderbird. Yeah, I think it was a Mustang, because it wasn't a Camaro. But anyway, so she's chasing... So it's the two muscle cars in their little race. Although, what I thought was weird, because I was actually waiting for Madani to just not follow Frank in his Mustang and actually go after the truck.
Right. And she was smart enough to figure out what was going on. Why was she not smart enough to figure, hey, let me follow the guns and not the person, meant to lead me away from the guns?
Yeah, although I guess, and this is what we get to, because, of course, it ends up with a game of chicken
Yeah.
And it becomes very much about whose whose muscle car is bigger, and
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
go after one another, and then Micro saves Frank Castle because again,
Yeah, but we don't know what would have happened there.
well, here's what and Micro makes this point. It's like, what was the point of that? What really was your plan in getting into that game of chicken? And it is, to me, I took that game of chicken, both Frank's engagement and Madani's engagement in it, as again both of their self-destructive tendencies. Their
Yeah, but
feelings
I
that,
mean,
yeah,
I feel like he knew what his goal was. He has a mission, and he's not going to give that mission up over, just getting some guns. He can get guns anywhere. This was like, he was like, gonna see how long it played out, but I don't think he was in an emotional enough state to like have meant, playing chicken. He was gonna pretend to play chicken, and then he was going to make the sensible decision. I mean, I don't know if Micro necessarily needed to do that, but
yeah.
I don't know if I can be mad at him for doing it either.
No. Well, I mean, like in my mind, he saved Frank because I think Frank and Madani were going to basically total each other in that situation. I don't think Frank would have turned. I don't think Madani would have turned. I think they both would have, you know, that basically Micro saved Frank's life because, I think, like I said, I do come back to this idea that Frank is waiting to die.
Right.
Frank is always waiting to die because, he keeps on putting himself,
Yeah.
the idea, one of the reasons, and this is this idea of these guys who keep on re-enlisting and re-enlisting. And while one part of it is, yes, they just feel comfortable in that chaos, the other part of it is that if you die out there, you can understand your death. But coming back to the real world, it's much harder to make sense of it. And if you die here in a quiet world, you don't know how you don't know how you got there, and you don't know how to get out of it. It's this whole thing,
And you don't,
yeah,
and you can't attribute it to a purpose.
exactly.
You can't say that you contributed with it, So It seems like a wasted piece of energy.
And that goes to our C plot, which is what we opened up with Lewis digging his hole and him getting the offer from Anvil. And again, this is this interesting thing because, and it goes to these weird ideas about conspiracy and who's doing what here. Because, Russo doesn't have to kick Lewis out.
Right.
He doesn't have to follow it, but he makes this choice based on two levels. One is, you don't want a guy who is not all there to be watching somebody's back on your team.
Right. I mean, the arguments he's making to him all seem to be like, yeah, but. You can see Russo thinking, yeah, but to every one of his arguments until they're standing, above watching her, and he goes, I wouldn't want a guy like that watching my back. And all of a sudden, it became something very real. And he's like, I can't have this guy out there.
And again, this is where I go into this idea, like, is it conspiracy or is it just we're going to look for, like Lewis, he's going to look for that conspiracy because he can't accept the fact that he really isn't fit for combat anymore. Because all he wants to know is combat. And, I did like, the guy from the group basically explaining to him how, the way he dug his hole is wrong for this environment. He dug it like you would in Afghanistan, which is a desert, and you're going to get rain and you're going to drown in there. But of course, again, that idea that maybe that was actually the point, even if it wasn't the point. Okay. So I think that wraps up this episode. Final thoughts, Maz?
I think we covered. Oh yeah, well, I mean, the way the car chase ends and Frank standing over Dina's body and pulling her out of the car, I thought that was a little intense. Like that car was destroyed.
Yeah.
And somehow she seems to be like, and the way he pulled her body out of the car, it was just tough to watch. It's like, I don't think you should be moving her in that way. You don't know what you're pulling or what you shouldn't be,
Yeah, well, this is...
But of course, it's a TV show, so a car needs to blow up, so she needs to get away,
Yes, and although, as we'll have reference to this next week, Micro will say that, an agent is trained to free themselves from an overturned car. You didn't have to do this, but he did. He did, and this again goes to what I say, is it's that self-destructive nature. He wants to pull her out, and then he wants her to know he's there. Because he doesn't have to. He could obscure he could have done any number of things
right,
but he doesn't,
right,
because he wants her to know.
And part of it maybe is also that people of that ilk can recognize each other, despite being on opposite sides of the fence. When you see somebody else that is vehemently just chasing the truth, then that person can be reasoned with. That person can be brought to see your point of view. And those sorts of allies are, I think, invaluable when you're playing this sort of a game with these sorts of rules and these sorts of players,
Exactly.
So it's in a way he's reaching out and maybe trying to make a friend too.
Yes. Okay, Maz. If people would like to talk to you about The Punisher or the upcoming Jessica Jones series or anything else, how can they find you?
They can reach me via email at mozzmanzor@gmail.com or find me on Facebook under Mozz Manzor. That's MOZZMANZOOR.
And, of course, you can always follow me on the Twitters you can always write to me that old-fashioned email way the way our Mozz and Paz once did at superconnectivityblog@gmail.com. That's superconnectivityblog, all one word, at gmail.com. And, of course, follow me on the Twitters as I live tweet Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. coming back this week. Legends of Tomorrow when it's airing and I can get it on my TV because Channel 11 is kind of spotty here. At Charlie Esser, that's CharlieEssser. Look for the two E's in the middle for equality. Oh. Thank you, dear friends, for enduring your just punishments. But we all know you will go forth and sin again. And when you do, come back here for more of the same. Good night. Okay. Do you want to hang up, or do you want to just continue recording and do 5 now?
Yeah, let's just continue recording. That might be a lot easier.
Yeah, it might be. Yeah, I was just thinking that. Okay, so let's hop right into episode 5. Let me pull that up here. Let me just... Okay. Oh, what are you doing? Oh, nobody cares about Death Wish.
I will go see it when it comes up, though. Yeah, it looks silly, but it might be fun.
Yeah, my kids are a little. I think they're interested in it. I mean, because they saw the previews for it and they've seen the ads for it, and they're not. They're like, I don't know. Okay.
What is it rated? Is it rated R?
Yeah, it's
better be.
Yeah, it's an Eli Roth film. It's definitely R. Okay. Are you sorry? Are you heartfully sorry for all the sins you have committed? It does not matter. For now you must face your just punishments. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your host, Charlie, the Professor Esser, and with me, as always, is my skinny rich friend.
Yeah, it's Mozz.
Hey, Mozz. Welcome to Season 1, Episode 5, Gunner. Frank and Micro go looking for answers from a reluctant witness. Madani and Sam learn of a looming investigation. Rollins sees a ghost.
Yeah, and he looks like one, too.
Yes. Dearblow Walsh is our director. Our writers this week are Steve Lightfoot, who gets that created by credit. Michael Jones Morales is our written by. Story editor, of course, Angela LaManna. And hardest working man in show business, writing once again, staff writer Ken Christensen. Okay. This was a pretty good episode, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I liked it. We had a nice little, forest scene.
Yes. So at the end of last episode, we had Madani get in her car accident. We see her sort of on the mend. Apparently she broke her boobs because
right.
That's where they put the cast. Apparently, I mean, I don't know. I'm just saying that she's, that comes up later too.
Yeah. I mean, she's got to be a superhuman because that car crash was insane.
Yes.
And she just gets up out of the bed and she's just like, give me my pills and my clothes and I'm out.
Yes.
They're like trying so hard to make her like the female version of every bad detective story ever,
Oh yeah. Well, that's what she has to be. She's got to be the equal to Frank Castle in this.
Yeah.
To make herself the proper antagonist to him.
Yeah.
And of course, in this, we do know that we're off to find Gunner. And this is where we ended off last episode. There's an interesting point in this too, which is that Frank's effort to go find Gunner means he's missing dinner with Micro's family.
Yeah.
Kind of stood him up for Sunday dinner, and basically everyone's realizing, what a jerk,
Yeah.
Meanwhile, he kind of has an excuse. He's being shot at.
Yeah. I mean, he's got real stuff to do.
Yeah.
You got a mission.
Yeah.
Takes precedence. What I thought was interesting was that, the first scene where Frank and Micro are arguing, Frank is putting the guns out for display for some reason. And he's such a good actor, the guy playing Micro, because they turn around and he goes, did you nag your wife this way? And like you can see that steak hit his whole body in portions. It's such a great little moment right there. It offends him so much, and he's so hurt by that, but he kind of knows it's true too.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because this is the truth of it. He probably did nag his wife. It's an interesting take between the two of them in how their domestic problems surfaced. Because, of course, Frank is off fighting the war and is always gone. Micro is off fighting the war, but he's always there. So, and so all those stresses of being this guy out in the mix of this war was something Micro couldn't shield his wife from the way that Frank, in many ways, I'm sure, shielded his wife from. And, there's this, story, this story that Frank tells in this about, when he got home early one time from one deployment, when his son was 8. And so we know this is like 5 years earlier because his son was a teenager when he last sees him. And about his son painting a Marine on their dining room wall because his dad's not there and he needs a Marine to keep the family safe. Basically, his son using this magical thinking with his father gone, and how the entire actions of Frank being so removed from his family made what he did something that he could protect his family from. Whereas Micro, it's always there. It's always he's coming home every night with the burdens of what he does. And so that is influencing his relationship with them as well.
Yeah.
And they're on their road trip. They're going down to see Gunner. And meanwhile, Madani and Sam are being interrogated. And again, Madani's boss comes in to basically say, look, if you know anything, you tell me now, not at the OIG.
Yeah.
Because they're going to ask you these things. And Sam makes a statement to her directly that he says he's not going to lie for her.
Right.
Which, of course, creates a lot of that tension between them during the
Right.
OIG scenes.
She doesn't choose to tell. Like, that's what it's interesting because, like, whatever Frank did as far as like an effort to reach out to her, you know, to make a friend or whatever, is working, because she could have came back and told her boss or whoever about Castle, but she's loyal to the truth and she just wants to find out what happened. So, like, whatever he did worked, you know?
Yes. Of course, it's also possible that she's figured out that Castle was part of the crew. Because remember, she has that list. Now, she's not going to put Castle on that list because his whereabouts are known, which is, you know, in a grave 6 feet under, arguably. But she knows Castle is possibly part of this, and not for nothing, she doesn't know what side Castle's necessarily on. Because, yeah, Castle was one of the guys in that room, possibly, but that doesn't mean he necessarily is someone that she can trust in this. And as far as, you know, Castle hurting the bad guys, you know, that could also be part of the larger conspiracy, you know. You know, it's an interesting question. Is she keeping the Punisher secret, or is she trying not to tip her hand because she's thinking conspiratorially and she doesn't know who she can trust? And speaking of people who are thinking conspiratorially and not knowing who they can trust, we get good old Gunner living off in his little cabin in the woods with no running water, no electricity. Although I like the fact that the Punisher makes, you know, when Micro is saying, "How can you live like that with no running water or electricity?" and he says, "Maybe he dug a well, like 90% of the people in the world." You know, just making the fact that a very large portion of people on this earth actually get their water from a local well. You know, it's you know, a lot of people don't have regular electricity throughout the world, and they live just fine.
We survived that way for a long time, and we still know how.
Yeah, and like he said, like a lot of people, like in our modern age, do that, and it's not necessarily. I mean, I'm sure all those people would rather have, you know, running water and flush toilets, because who wouldn't? But the fact of the matter is that you can survive like that and have a fairly decent and pleasant existence. And for what it's worth, you know, to speak to Madani not knowing who she can trust and whether or not the Punisher might be in on it, when Frank Castle shows up at Gunner's cabin, Gunner is not particularly welcoming to Frank Castle either.
He told him he wasn't going to be happy, you know?
Yeah.
He knew what he was walking into.
Well, yeah, and he gets narrow in the arm for his trouble, you know?
Yeah.
And again, this is an interesting thing to me on this, because, of course, you know, Gunner and Frank, they sort of reconnect, and they're talking about, you know, what happened, and I'm trying to remember if he said that Agent Orange saw because that was like what made him realize what they were doing was wrong, was, you know, one of the guys had loaned him his knife, and he died, and he went to go put his knife in with his body, and he saw, you know, the colonel and the rest of them loading the bodies up with the heroin. I can't remember if he said Agent Orange was there or not.
I think he said he was.
Yeah.
Or I don't remember either.
Yeah, I think he said he was, but I'm not sure. You know, and again, that's one of these things where, you know, I don't know 100% what the storyline is there, and, you know, like I said, I do wonder at times how this is all playing out, because...
Well, right, see, but then this, again, points to, like, why they don't want any light shed on this issue, because the revenue stream of these drugs or whatever would be affected.
Yeah.
I'm sure everybody's getting a piece of that, all the way down to someone in Wolf's position or someone, you know, obviously in Agent Orange position. So.
Yes. Oh, and we do get his name. He is Rollins. He is
William Rollins.
Yes. You know, but again, it's just this, I guess, to me, it's just this weird thing, especially when they keep on flashing back to him in his little room, watching the live streams. Part of me just feels like he seems like such a, you know, work-a-day spook, you know? Like, he's not part of this grand conspiracy. He's just following his leads and tying up his loose ends. And, you know, not for nothing with the guys coming in to confront Gunner, we don't necessarily know that they were there to kill Gunner. We don't know what the guy... They were going in because they knew Gunner was a guy who might kill them. And as we saw, you know, Gunner will put an arrow in you when you step on his property. You know, they don't know if they've got some kind of Unabomber situation here with Gunner. You know, they don't know, is this guy so far gone that he's going to fire on American soldiers, you know, or is he going to be someone that we can sit and talk to? But we know that this is a lead that's coming up. And again, this is one of these situations, because this is this thing that I come to, and why I think that Micro is lying to Frank when he says that Frank's family was killed because of this event. Because Gunner's the guy who actually released the video.
Right.
And not for nothing, the Punisher, you know, Frank knew who was holding the camera. So it wouldn't be that hard for anyone else to figure out who was holding the camera. But they let him just go off and live his life. He's not hurting anybody. He's not doing anything for all these years since. And you get this idea that maybe they really weren't that concerned about these people. You know, they were not going to chase down Frank Castle. And really, when you think about it, why would they chase down Frank Castle? There was nothing about Frank's last deployment that, aside from the fact that he punched a CO. He's probably not the first guy to do that, you know. And we do see that, you know, Rollins still has that little scar from where his eye socket got shattered. But you know what? For what it's worth, I get the feeling that, like, Rollins never thought about that another day after that incident. Because I'm sure, not for nothing, I'm sure Rollins felt horrible about the whole situation too. He is a professional spook, and he's sent guys in with bad intel. They were able to accomplish a job. They did what they had to do. And in the moment, he's going to defend himself the way that anybody defends themselves, you know. Same way that the Punisher is going to defend himself and says, well, I did my part. I did what I was supposed to do. Someone else screwed up along the line. And I think he felt bad about that, but that in the end, they got the guy. They got the target. They found the target they were looking for. They hit the target. That's what they needed to do. And yes, people died. That's that. You know, there's this, you know, just to throw it out there, you know, there is the latest Mission Impossible and movie out, and they have this great line where, I guess Ethan Hunt has let the plutonium fall in the hands of the bad guys.
Right.
And Alec Baldwin's character says he had a choice to make: let them go or risk the lives of his people. And the CIA person there looks at him and says, "That's the job." Literally,
Right.
that is his job, to die in the line of duty to prevent things like this from happening. And now we've got this whole mess.
Died for a purpose.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Because he didn't want to make the choice that you do in the Nakashi Maru, the no-win situation. I'm probably mispronouncing it. But that's the idea, is that he did not want
Kobayashi Maru.
I'm sorry?
I think it's a Kobayashi Maru.
Kobayashi Maru, yes. That sounds more like what it is. Yes, so he blows the Kobayashi Maru. But that's the thing. That's the job. And that was Frank Castle's job. And that was Agent Orange's job. They were all there to do their job. They all did their job. Somebody got their eye socket punched. Like I said, I don't think Agent Orange is the kind of guy who sits there and says, "Oh, Punisher, I'll get you for punching me." I don't think he's the kind of guy who takes slights heavily. That he sees it as a slight, and as a slight, it is a slight. It is something slight in his life. It's not something he is obsessed about or worried about. He just wants to take care of business to get to the next, to make sure that he does what he needs to do to protect the country. And he sends his guys out there to try and protect the country. And of course, this leads to a whole fight with the Punisher and Gunner, taking out all these highly trained operatives. Man,
Right.
with an arrow in his arm, Punisher still, beats the heck out of these guys.
Well, yeah, but he had a little bit of help from the sky.
Yes, he did.
And we get a little bit more insight into how powerful an ally like Micro can be in situations like this,
Oh, yeah, well, of course, because but again, this is one of these things that tell me this was not, they weren't going in there with the plan of attacking and killing Gunner. Because they didn't have air support. They were coming in there. They were ready to face a fight if they had to, but they weren't going in. They weren't attacking the compound. They were entering the compound to have parley in however they could, probably with the intention of retreating as soon if things really got out of hand.
I think they were probably there to kidnap him and then bring him in for questioning.
Yeah,
that's what I think.
Well, that's a possibility too. But the fact that they did not have air support, they didn't even have a drone, and clearly they had all kinds of, they weren't.
And they didn't expect there to be anybody but Gunner there, so they were just coming to get one guy. They thought they had enough manpower to get one guy.
Yeah.
Little did they know that he would have an eye in the sky and, a buddy that he had actually fought with before. So that's some pretty damning odds.
Yeah, it was bad odds, and they lost that fight, And Agent Orange sees Frank Castle, and he knows that Frank Castle is alive. Which again, like I said, I mean, things like these, they make me wonder. Again, is it conspiracy or is it just coincidence? Because,
or just the way things work.
Yeah, well, exactly. I mean, it is interesting how it plays out. We see that Frank does defeat all the faceless soldiers who he cuts down in cold blood. So much for his "I don't hurt the good guys" rule.
Right.
Because of course, who are the good guys? We don't know. These were just soldiers in.
No, but I think that's a definition that's shifting always based on your environment. So if somebody's aggressing on you, that evaluation becomes very different than when we're just talking. So
yeah, well, I mean,
I think the moment you cross that barrier.
Well, and without a doubt, that is the case. Although, again, like I said, we don't know who. I'm not sure who fired. I want to say the Punisher and Gunner fired first on the soldiers. I don't think the soldiers fired first.
Interesting.
I think that basically the soldier. In fact, if I recall correctly, the soldiers came in, got caught in the various traps that Gunner had set around his location, and then that's when the Punisher, because the guy gets the bear trap on his leg, and then the Punisher takes his gun and starts shooting all his buddies. So it's like, it's kind of, and again, to this point, I don't think they were coming in there with the idea of let's go in and attack and kill Gunner. I think it was something much more, they were ready for a fight, but then the fight came to them in a way that they weren't expecting. You know? And, you know, what happens in the next couple of episodes, we're going to have to see. I think we're halfway through the season now. I think 5 episodes. Actually, I think it's a 10 season arc or 10 episode arc. You know, I was very sad to see Gunner go. I have to be honest. I was kind of hopeful that, you know, Gunner might have made it through, might have joined the team for a little while, but nope. And for what it's worth, they basically kill him off. Oh, actually, there are 15 episodes this season? Good gosh.
Holy cow.
Yeah, well, we are way behind. Well, actually, no. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Let's see here. I'm just looking here. Okay. Let's see here. So, the next one is Judas Ghost, Crosshairs, Cold Steel, Front Toward Enemy, Virtue of the Vicious, Danger
13.
Close,
There's 13.
Home. Yeah, so we got 8 more episodes to go before we get to Memento Mori, which is our final episode this season. You know, it was sad to see Gunner go. Although I guess if nothing else, it saved Micro from having to drag 2 bodies out.
Right.
You know,
right.
Basically,
it made me wonder how far that van was. I'm sure he drove it further and further to wherever the drone had told him Frank had collapsed.
Yeah.
And was just in the area and fighting. Because I don't think Micro was, you know, the kind of person that would have been able to carry him too far.
Yeah. Although
he had enough trouble getting him up.
Although I'm kind of sad because also Frank didn't get the chance to bury Gunner, so Gunner was just left out to be exposed to the elements.
Yeah, that was you know, just one of those scenes where you sort of, where the stark reality of life and death meets the places where, you know, ceremony and tradition exist, you know, and how quickly you have to make a decision and walk away from that. And it's a powerful scene where he just says, yeah, I'll be right back. But he knows he's walking away, you know. He knows he won't be able to fulfill that.
Yeah. Well, and, you know, for what it's worth, Frank doesn't even get the opportunity because he is out cold by the time that Micro finds him and drags him to safety. And and for what it's worth, when Frank does come to, it's not like he's sitting there going, oh, hey, we got to go back for Gunner. It's like, you know, I guess you can get your hands dirty after all. Yeah. You know.
There's hope for you yet.
Yeah, and there is arguably hope. But like I said, every episode I see, I get more and more convinced that the conspiracy is Micro, not Rollins, not even Russo, not anybody. That it's Micro is the one who has fabricated this conspiracy just so he can have the Punisher take out his enemies. You know.
Yeah, but what would his motivations be? Who are his enemies?
His enemies.
Or are we gonna?
Well, he knows that Wolf killed him. So, and to put it to you simply. So you have, because Micro got the video. We know because Micro gave the video to Frank.
Right.
So he knows Wolf shot him intentionally. You know. So, you know, and Micro may be even creating his own sense of conspiracy from everything Because Wolf was probably, to put it simply, Wolf was probably on the take from the Colonel. Because,
Right.
But the fact of the matter is that the Colonel's operations, shipping the drugs into the city, that might have had nothing to do with the larger crimes of the CIA and Agent Orange. Essentially, Wolf shot Micro not because he was going to expose the criminal behavior of the CIA and their murder squads in Afghanistan, but because it might have led to the revelation that the Colonel and his crew were using their covert operations in Afghanistan as a cover to smuggling heroin.
Right.
That the conspiracy isn't the big global conspiracy of, the New World Order. It's drug dealers killing people that might find out about their drug dealing. Bring it in this much smaller scope. And again, like I said, entirely possible that Frank Castle wasn't really a target. That basically, the crossfire with all the gangs, that might have been an intentional effort to cause that crossfire. But that anyone knew that Frank Castle and his family were going to be there, that's where it becomes conspiracy, because, yes, Frank always goes there. But does anybody ask Frank, where are you taking your kids the second you get back? What are your plans so we can kill you and your family?
Because the story they built up in Daredevil wasn't that it was planned. It was just that it was a bad coincidence.
Well, exactly. And I think that, and this is what I've always said about the character of the Punisher, and what I say also to an extent about the character of Batman, that the character is better when it's a random act of violence.
Right. I agree wholeheartedly.
That when it's a random act of violence, it's a better story because it informs.
There's no end.
Exactly. And for what it's worth, to give you an idea, we start off this season with this idea that he's done being the Punisher because he killed everyone that was involved in that crime. But the idea that the Punisher, and what maybe we're going to grow out of this, is the Punisher realizing that the war never ends. That the war isn't against a person; it's against a mode of thinking.
Exactly. It's against an emotion that is present and can be awakened in any of us.
Exactly. It's like a war on terror.
Right. Oh, jeez.
And it's a war on crime. It's a war on what is this threat. Okay. I think that wraps it up for this episode, Mozz. If people would like to reach out to you and talk to you about getting their just punishments for the crimes they have committed, how can they find you?
They can email me at mozzmanzor@gmail.com or find me on Facebook under Mozz Manzor. That's MOZZMANZOOR.
And, of course, you can always write to me in that old-fashioned email way the way our Mozz and Pause and Micro once did at superconnectivityblog@gmail.com. That's superconnectivityblog, all one word, @gmail.com. And, of course, follow me on the Twitters as I live tweet Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Legends of Tomorrow when they come in on my TV at Charlie Esser. That's CharlieEsser. Look for the two E's in the middle for quality. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you once again for joining us for this 5th episode of Just Punishments. Go in peace and sin no more. But when you sin, and we know you do, you will return here